has to be done with sensitivity because it cannot be forgotten. That's the key. Can't be forgotten. Now, it's interesting I mentioned that forgotten, that word. And there is another event that occurred many years ago in the late 60s, 1968 to be precise, called Ronan Point. And it was a disaster. People died, 4 people died due to a gas explosion. And
Right.
that changed my field, or particular field of structural engineering, forever. Not only just the UK, but the rest of the world. And Grenfell's having the same effect. It's an event that shouldn't have happened, but it did.
And now, if you live in London, you'll be very well aware of this. If you travel from the west of the city into town, or you go on the Hammersmith and City Underground line, which is often overground, you will know that Grenfell Tower in West London is being demolished incredibly carefully. Lights projected from the tower's corners are meant to provide a visual reminder of its presence. I mean, none of us will ever forget that night in 2017. 72 people lost their lives in the Grenfell Tower fire. This demolition plan has been controversial, inevitably, with families of the victims of the fire and survivors as well. How is it being done? Chris O'Regan is a fellow of both the Institution of Civil Engineers and of Structural Engineers as well. Chris, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
You acknowledge, I know, all the sensitivities around this. This is an extraordinarily difficult task, isn't it?
It is. It has to be done with sensitivity because it cannot be forgotten. That's the key. Can't be forgotten. Now, it's interesting I mentioned that forgotten, that word. And there is another event that occurred many years ago in the late 60s, 1968 to be precise, called Ronan Point. And it was a disaster. People died, 4 people died due to a gas explosion. And
Right.
that changed my field, or particular field of structural engineering, forever. Not only just the UK, but the rest of the world. And Grenfell's having the same effect. It's an event that shouldn't have happened, but it did. And the deconstruction of it has to be done in such a way that carefully, methodically, of course, and technically, it's about reverse building it, knowing how it was put together in the first place, and then actually doing that in reverse.
Okay, well,
very carefully.
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, this is an area that, those of us outside your industry have no clue about it at all. There's no way you could pull this building down without knowing how it was put up then?
That's not strictly true. There is ways of, certainly records of drawing of buildings of that age are, rare, sadly. So what you normally do is do lots of forensics, sort of investigations, and see how it was actually fitted together before you do anything. And that has been done. It has to be done before any work can be carried out in an attempt to deconstruct it. And that's how it would be. And demolition experts, which is a completely different field, would know how to do this. But it's essentially what all structural engineers are required to do for new buildings, where you design them not only to be built, but also to be demolished in far, far, far in the future.
Right. I mean, I simply didn't appreciate that, and I should have thought about it. So bits of the building, presumably some of them, can be brought down inside the shell, and other parts are taken away externally. Is that correct?
Well, you have to be very careful about the weight of the materials, but as you drop them down. But the biggest problem with demolition is dust generation. Creation, you don't want that spreading out anywhere because it's extremely toxic and extremely dangerous. And you might see this when people are doing large demolition works where people are spraying water everywhere. That is simply to dampen down everything so the dust generated from the removal and the breaking up of the material doesn't leave or escape the site too much and is contained within the space, especially in such a built-up area. That is very, very important.
Now, I understand this project at Grenfell is going to take a couple of years. I have to say, I go past it very regularly, and it is, I think it's probably half the size it used to be. So a real progress has been made, but nobody appears to have been evacuated. So this is being an incredibly well-contained operation.
Yes, I think it's necessary. For it to expand further would be folly. It's an important site, and again, one treated with respect. So it has to be done in a way that allows people to live there, live in close proximity, and just to allow for people to still live in the environment, to remember what it is, and allow people to come and see it, to recall what's going on.
You did allude earlier to the fact that your industry has really changed. Can you just explain a little bit more about that? And apart from incidents like the one you referred to, Ronan Point, what else has made things change necessarily?
I think the biggest major change has really been there's been some laws enacted, the Building Safety Act, which has affected the entire construction industry significantly. But I think the best way I can describe it in a more human way is accountability. People have had to stand up and say, I am competent to do this work. I know what I'm doing. And the general public and people who aren't in the field of whatever construction professionals put that under question when Grenfell happened. Like, hang on, I thought you people knew what you were doing. What happened here? And now we've had to stand up and say, yes, we are competent, and here's how we demonstrate that. But it's really about accountability. And also another really important thing that's a major change that's now been quite emboldening, quite encouraging, is the elevation of empathy and ethics, and how that's critical, especially when building and designing residential buildings or modifying them. You've got to understand that the occupants of these buildings have to be safe.
Well, I mean,
and that's, and it's just, you may sound obvious, but
no, I mean, it doesn't seem a lot to ask. I think so many of us are still thinking about that terrible event in Switzerland on New Year's Eve. And those people who, and we all do it, we all make stupid remarks, don't we, about health and safety. But that's what happens when people are negligent and things go wrong.
Yeah, not the proper checks. The systems are in place, but if they're not executed, then what use are they? So that's really the key. So in that situation, as far as I understand it, from what little I read about it, is about there were checks and balances in place, but they weren't being followed through. And that's as far as I know on that. But on going back to my point and how it's affected construction industry in the UK, especially England, I have to say, because Scotland has their own set of rules and regulations, and indeed Wales. But it's really about how we as construction professionals are responsible and embrace that responsibility and take accountability for our decisions and our work to make sure so that we can rebuild the trust we once had with the general public.
Thank you very much. That's very sobering, actually. Chris O'Regan, who's a fellow of the Institution of Civil Engineers and Structural Engineers.